Good morning, Truckee. And what a fine morning it is. I'll tell you this weather, my standard quip has been, if this is global warming, maybe it's not so bad after all, but it is bad, and but we can appreciate the warm weather. So I'm Jim Porter. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. I celebrated my birthday on Cinco de Mayo, the big 7-5. Ooh. Which is, it's worth oohing about. But I'm here.
They still letting you drive?
Yeah, as sharp as ever. And so we appreciate you being here. And we want to thank Rory and his team for filming all of this, and remind you that you can be watching on live stream, channel 18 or Zoom. But as I read those words, I always remember, you must already know because you're watching us. So I want to thank our sponsors, and we have a new sponsor, so that's kind of exciting. I'll save that for the last, just because I know you're excited. So Tall Forest Health System, Porter Simon, Dixon Realty, Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, NV5, Auerbach Engineering, Tahoe Truckee Media, Sierra Sun Moonshine Inc., 101.5, the great town of Truckee, the Truckee Tahoe Airport District, and drumroll, Ted, JK Architectural and Engineering, and that's Jordan and Carla and David and Gary Davis, who I think retired recently. So great team. They do excellent work, and we appreciate their stepping up. And our committee that puts this on is Lynn Saunders to my right, the lead queen bee. The chamber staff, Ruth Garrissey, Melissa Williams, and Carolina Pacheco. Kelly Cutler with CAT, the Contractors Association. Mayumi Elegado, Moonshine Inc. Ernie Grossman apparently refuses to state any affiliation. Gerald Herrick is the Fire Department Board. Tony Lashbrook, everybody knows and loves Tony. Former town manager. Deb Ryan, the Community Foundation. And Teddy Owens, the Health
Only
system.
My grandmother called me Teddy.
Well, Ted and I are Teddy Roosevelt fans, so that's where that comes from. So
acceptable.
We have a great presentation today. 3 fire people, rather timely, of course. We'll ask you to hold your questions, but you can send them in. There should be a number on the screen, but it's 530-412-3719. And you can get on, or you go into the chat if you're on Zoom, something I've never been able to figure out how to do. So, here we go. In mountain communities like ours, wildfires are a major hazard. The fire season in California and across the West is starting earlier and ending later each year. I think we're all calling this the new norm. And today we have a trio of experts to help us understand the fire season as it's coming up, how we can be prepared, and what resources they can bring to bear on the topic, okay? So we're going to start with CAL FIRE Unit Chief Brian Estes out of Auburn. And Brian will give us a wildlife prediction of the upcoming fire season and share how the state firefighting agency is preparing the state and our local area. So Brian, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Jim, and good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to be here. Really honored, as always, to sit with my partners here on the dais and hopefully talk a little bit about, from the state perspective, what we're looking at coming into fire season 2021. So again, my name is Brian Estes. I'm the unit chief for the CAL FIRE Nevada Yuba Placer Unit and the fire chief for the Placer County Fire Department. So before we talk about the predictions for 2021, I want to go over real quickly what our, kind of a little bit of a reflection on our 2020 fire season. And it was significant, obviously, and in many ways. It was the most destructive and disastrous fire season in California's recorded history. Some of the statistics we had in the state responsibility areas, which really surround the town of Truckee, we had almost 10,000 wildland fires statewide in the state responsibility area. Over 4.2 million acres of California were burned last year. and close to 10,500 structures were damaged or destroyed. We had 33 fatalities directly related to the fires across California. So as I said, it was just destructive in nature and really did not spare geographical boundaries from the highest elevations in the National Forest System to the urbanized areas across California. Specific to the Truckee Basin in both Nevada and Placer counties in 2020, across our entire unit, Nevada, Yuba, and Placer counties, we had over 990 wildland fires. Now, the great thing about, the system that we have between state, federal, and local government resources is that most of you probably never heard about, 95% of those. They didn't make the news, and that means we were doing our job as a unified suppression force. On the east side here, our fire occurrence was relatively low. The risk is incredibly high on the east side. The conditions are incredibly high, but we kept our frequency and our acreage fairly low on the east side last year. And a lot of that was due to just a very robust and unified response from state, federal, and local resources. And one of the other things that I think is paramount to talk about is our consolidated dispatching that we have here on the east side. And the Grass Valley Emergency Command Center, CAL FIRE's hub for 911 dispatching over 31 local government agencies, including my partner here, Chief Saline, Truckee, and 5 agencies within the east side, and then our newest partner in Incline Village in Washoe County, North Lake Tahoe Fire. So having that fabric weaved into the closest resource concept, regardless of the patch on the side of the fire engine, I think is a direct result of our low acreage and low number of fires. We did have about a 95.8% success rate. Part of CAL FIRE's mission is to keep 95% of our initial attack fires at 10 acres or less. And we did have almost a 96% success rate on that last year. So as we move into looking at the forecasted conditions for 2021, you don't have to look very far. If you drive up to the top of the summit there at Interstate 80, you can see what's left of our winter snowpack. As of May 1st, our winter snowpack across the northern region was about 59% of normal. I think we're going to see that really dramatically fall off because there's really no forecasted cold weather. There's no forecasted late spring or early season precipitation. So I think that snowpack is going to reduce dramatically. And that's not only has an effect on our soil moistures and fuels condition, but it has a dramatic effect on our water storage in the reservoirs as we get into the runoff in the spring. We do have a potential to have forecasted monsoonal flows. As we saw last year, a big contributor to fire spread and fire ignition was lightning. And it's not, while we see lightning as a fairly routine occurrence in the eastern side of the Sierras and the high country, sometimes, it may or may not come with moisture. But on the western slope, we saw a significant amount of lightning last year, which was abnormal. And they are predicting a potential for that this year as well. One of the things that I've taken from our predictive services is that our potential for large fire growth right now is about 3 months ahead of schedule. And so fires that we're seeing burn right now and into early June, I think are going to act more like they should in a normal year in July, August, even early September. And that's a consideration for all of us that are sitting up here. So for CAL FIRE, our preparedness levels, we move through 4 different staffing levels. We never fully unstaff our suppression resources, but we have a minimum and a maximum level. We will be in what we call our peak staffing level by no later than probably June 1st. That'll take us to 27 fully staffed engine companies, 5 Type 1 hand crews, 4 dozers, and our 2 air tankers and air attack out of the Grass Valley Air Attack Base. We're looking at a burn suspension across state responsibility areas, probably predicted for mid-May. Actually, my operations folks are talking about that this morning as we speak, and we will be putting that press release out as soon as we make a determination. One of the things that is always a consideration for us in the more regional response is our aircraft and hand crew preparedness. We are dealing with a significant decrease in our hand crew operations across California. CAL FIRE has historically, since the early 40s, utilized a really successful program in partnership with Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to use inmate firefighting crews. And at our peak strength, those number in the 160 to 165 inmate crews across California. We are down this year to about 80 crews, and those crews number much smaller in crew strength, where a normal crew strength would be in the 17 to 18 personnel per crew. We're down in the 12 to 13, and that, quite frankly, is just is a reduction in the inmate labor force available to us and supplied by Department of Corrections. So we have closed 8 camps across the state of California. We are fortunate here through some support from our local elected officials and good, strong lobbying and a good fight from our fire officials that our camp at Washington Ridge, while reduced in numbers, is still open and will be available. And they are a camp that responds here to the east side into the Truckee Basin on a pretty routine basis. So what are we doing to counteract some of that? We've added additional dozers across the region. We will add a 4th dozer here in our unit, and that dozer is oftentimes pre-positioned here to Station 50, which is the station here at the airport that we co-locate with Truckee Fire Protection District, and that's just to give us a little bit of that bolstered resource allotment. And we are adding some additional Firefighter 1 hand crews where applicable. In our aircraft fleet, we've advanced our rotary wing or helicopter fleet with the addition of the S-70I Blackhawk. We will be up to 8 of those aircraft through this fire season out of a total of 13 that will take the program to its height. And all of our air tankers will be in service and ready to go by June 1st at our air attack bases, with our new heavy C-130 program on track for full implementation in 2022. So talking specifically about the Truckee Basin and a lot of our successes, reflections on successes and looking into the future, Chief Celine and I worked real closely together a couple years ago to ensure that CAL FIRE had year-round staffing at Station 50, and I think that's been an amazing venture, not only for the mutual aid, all-risk fire protection efforts here in the Truckee Basin, but also our efforts in supporting fuel reduction in that across the region. In 2020, we were able to treat 712 hazard piles on state responsibility area for a total of 58 acres across the region treated, and felled 97 hazard trees across roadways, access and egress, prioritizing those evacuation routes and that across the Truckee Basin. And like I said, when we reach those critical fire dangers in the Truckee Basin, we'll be moving that 4th dozer up here to Station 50 for that bolstered resource. So as I close out, I just want to, thank specifically Chief Celine and our partners with the Forest Service. We have a really historic cooperative effort with Truckee Fire Protection District that dates back decades. We share the fire station here at the airport. We have a wildland protection agreement that the town has been part of for many years, and we really have a shared philosophy in our emergency service delivery, our dedication to the community here and to the Truckee Basin. We are going to be engaging in our fireworks interdiction operation around the 4th of July this year, which has been successful in thwarting the introduction of illegal fireworks from out of state into the state of California, and we will be engaging in that as well. And lastly, I think one of the things that has made us successful and will continue to is just our unified command approach. Regardless of where the fire happens, whose jurisdictional authority it's on, we will always be standing together at the back of the vehicle, operating with a single set of objectives, law enforcement and fire together, to ensure the protection of the community and the citizens here in the Truckee Basin. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to my partners, and thank you very much for your time.
All right, Brian Estes, CAL FIRE, thank you, Brian, and your crews for your service. Jonathan Cook Fisher is next. All right, here we go. So as we've seen, the pandemic has created a strong desire for people to recreate outside of which creates wildfire challenges, such as more dispersed campers. And they're not only dispersed, they're not informed. I can't tell you how many campsites I've gone to. We do a lot of remote camping that we get there, and there's beer cans everywhere, toilet paper, poop everywhere, cigarette butts, and I was going, how could this be? How could anybody be so naive or so disrespectful? So I know a lot of folks are working on an education program there. So our Truckee District Ranger is Jonathan Cook Fisher, who I can tell you receives high marks. He's, a couple of years, something like that? Yeah. And well received, doing a great job. And he's going to explain how to camp responsibly during this fire season and how the Forest Service will use prescribed fires to minimize fire damage. Jonathan Cook Fisher.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, Jonathan Cook Fisher. I'm the District Ranger here in Truckee for the Tahoe National Forest. It's great to join you this morning. And I'd like to bring an update to you all both on our veg management and prescribed fire program, and then also speak to what we're seeing in terms of COVID-related recreation and its impact on wildfire potential. And so those will be the two main topics today. One moment. There we go. Great. Thank you. So first and foremost, the Tahoe National Forest for several years now has been really ramping up its prescribed fire program and how we treat a variety of vegetation types, really the small flashy fuels, the brush, etc. We treated over 20,000 acres of hazardous fuels last year in 2020 on the Tahoe National Forest. And we burned over 3,400 acres. Now, the Truckee component last year to that was 360, but we've already burned more than 400 acres this year, so the increase in change continues. And we're able to achieve that in part because of our partnerships, and also because there is really a level of community support and a call to action to get more of this kind of work done. So it's really important for us to continue in that effort. Some notable projects is that we completed pile burning in Onion Creek, also Big Jack East, which these photos illustrate here. You all will remember the large plume that came out of Big Jack East in, I think that was, December. We did receive a number of phone calls for that. We do apologize for these moments. We try to make as much notification as possible, but this kind of work is really necessary. Mind you, that was only 17 acres of piles, so it was really just a small amount of material, but it was vital work. We were really proud when that was pulled off. We do have additional prescribed fires planned for the Prosser Hill area. You might remember a couple falls ago that we were doing some underburning in that project. Underburning is when it's more of a general burn through the forest that has already been treated. So these aren't necessarily piles. This is more of a general broadcast burn sort of situation. We have additional plans as well for Sage Hen Creek, the Woodchopper Springs area, and then Big Jack East, again, moving away from piles and towards an underburn. We're not quite ready for that project because we need the conditions to just dry out just a bit more. And also on Big Jack East, more generally speaking, is we have additional mastication work planned for this summer that has to occur before we reintroduce fire. And in fact, that's one of our biggest challenges on the Tahoe National Forest, and specifically Truckee, is that while we all recognize prescribed fire is part of the natural ecosystem and we want to achieve more of that, we have to treat the forest first. We can't just simply reintroduce fire because of its current condition. And so it takes us quite a while to get to that point. And that really gets to these next grouping of projects, which is we are continuing for planning and implementation of both the Glenshire Brockway fuels reduction, which we are doing with our partners. Ladybug Veg Management Project is a 2,000-acre project near the Stampede Reservoir. That is going out with our partners at the National Forest Foundation. Hopefully work will begin there this summer. Big Jack East, as I mentioned, that's the 2,000 acres, which includes mastication work, another 900 acres this summer. And then we're really excited to introduce to the community the Five Creeks Veg Management Project. This represents perhaps Truckee's largest veg management project in recent history. This is 6,000 acres planned for treatment along Highway 89, most of it centered to the west. And we're really excited about it because this area represents perhaps some of our largest fire risk. It is both an evacuation route, but it's also an area of the forest in which we have very little fire history, and that the conditions are such that it has potential for large catastrophic fire should it be established in there. So the Five Creeks Veg Management Project, we're going to start that planning effort. Public scoping will begin hopefully later this month. Oh. Thanks, you've already moved it. Now, on the recreation side, yes, it is true. What everyone experienced in 2020 was unusual. We saw perhaps the largest visitation levels in our campground program we had ever seen. We saw a level of dispersed camping that was unprecedented. And with that came a variety of challenges. Across the forest, we responded to more than 150 illegal campfires, many of which did make it into the vegetation and had potential to cause serious impact to the forest. Basically, because all facilities were full and folks were looking for an escape, and who wouldn't? So this is one of those topics where, on the one hand, we couldn't be more pleased that the public has reintroduced their love affair for national forests and for public lands. It's wonderful. But with it, we have a variety of folks that either are inexperienced or they're not familiar on some of the normal etiquette that might come with dispersed camping opportunities. So we had a variety of these sorts of makeshift campsites kind of pop up. And this situation here occurred northeast of Stampede to the eastern portion of the Truckee Ranger District. A variety of folks leaving behind various trash, having illegal fires, barbecues, things of that nature. And this was prevalent, again, across the forest. Again, all really nice folks looking for an escape, looking for something to do, trying to just get out and get some fresh air. But with that came numerous impacts, including fires. So this was just one of the many fires that did end up requiring a full response in order to make sure that it was put out properly. This one went to about 5 acres, and it was east of Boca. So what have we done? Have we done anything different? Yes, we have. So we've increased the level of recreation staffing across the district, and so we'll have some of the highest numbers we've had in recent history. We've also made significant investment in our signage, our regulatory signage, our changeable message signs, the electronic signs. You'll see those already on the weekends out at Boca, and we're getting some additional. And with that comes the question, well, what can I do? I'm a resident of Truckee. I have concerns. First, if you see something, you need to say something. And so 911 is always available. The ranger station is open for virtual services at this time. We are fully staffed. We have folks in the field. We're starting our patrols already. So if you see something that just doesn't feel right, make sure you tell somebody. The other thing that I want to remind the community of is that while more general forest fire restrictions may not yet be in place, Truckee enjoys a heightened level of management at all times of the year. So if you look at the recreation map, you'll see a boundary around the community that highlights where camping and campfires are not allowed at any time of season. And so that's an important reminder that if the Tahoe National Forest more generally may not be yet in fire restrictions, Truckee already enjoys a certain level of protection. So if you see something, say something. Thanks.
All right, Jonathan Cook-Fisher, thank you. Forest Service doing the job out there. All right, our next speaker is Bill Saline. Everybody knows and loves Bill. So there are several steps residents can take now to assess their wildlife risks and safeguard homes and prepare for wildfire. Here to tell us more about that and about evacuation routes is Truckee Fire Protection District Chief Bill Saline. Bill?
Thanks, Jim. I'll try to hit on a lot of those things, but today I really want to focus on some of the things going on locally and review a couple of the fire prevention basics for those of you that may not be new to the area or by way of a little bit of a refresher. Sorry, let me... Great, thanks. You often hear us talk about the buildup of fire fuels in the wildland over the last 100 years, and I just wanted to show you a couple pictures of our local area. The map here shows a 100-year fire history in the Truckee area, and if you look at the bottom of it, you can see a red circle, and that circle is around the Truckee area, and the areas in yellow have had big fires in the last 100 years. It's kind of an interesting snapshot. A couple things that I think we can take from this picture. First, you'll notice that the areas around most of our neighborhoods in Truckee and Donner Summit have not had a big fire in the last 100 years. And of course, as Jonathan pointed out, this means we've suppressed fires, their natural ability to thin out the forest and remove dead trees, brush, pine needles, and those sort of things over the years, which would lead us to believe that the fire danger and the fuel condition in those areas is at sort of historical levels. The other thing to note is in this picture is that big fires can happen here in our part of the Sierra, and they have over the last 100 years, and as recently as last year, the Loyalton fire that some of you may remember, and the North fire that were just north of Truckee in similar kind of vegetation makeup. You also may have heard the term wildland-urban interface, or WUI, and we throw that around, but I wanted to show you a picture of what this means to us. This is the area, of course, where the wildland meets and is intermixed with our homes and our neighborhoods. This is a map of the Truckee Fire District, and you can see the population areas in dark there. You can also see by the colored lines that this is what we think of as the WUI in our area. All of our focus at the fire district and our partners is to reduce the threat of wildfire in these areas, to protect the homes and neighborhoods. So when we think about wildfire prevention, we know that wildfires will happen in our area. So the objective is to prevent out-of-control fires to the extent that we can. One way to think about this is a sort of a three-legged stool. Fire prevention in the WUI really centers around reducing these fire fuels, both around homes and in the open space that we've been talking about. It's the heavy lifting of fire prevention because the vegetation, of course, grows back. It can be hard and costly work to remove. Another leg of the stool that sometimes we don't talk enough about is our reliance on everyone to participate in the prevention work, whether it's reducing fire fuels around your home or packing your go bag so that you're ready to leave on a moment's notice when there's an evacuation, things like that. And of course, lastly is the third leg, and that's the coordinated fire and law enforcement response and the agencies that will fight the fire and evacuate people in harm's way. And obviously, not one of these things can work by itself. So I wanted to just take a second and talk about a couple things that are going on in each of these areas. One of the areas that we spend a lot of time on, and we've talked about already today, is all of our agencies work in the WUI to reduce these these fuels on these larger pieces of land. Specifically in Truckee in 2016, stakeholders and citizens got together. We completed a community wildfire protection plan. We refer to that as the CWPP. It identified many of these pieces of land in the WUI that needed to have fuel reduction work. The work in the WUI typically looks like these pictures. Often heavy equipment can go in and selectively reduce fire fuels and then return the forest to maybe what a natural forest would look like. Last year, as Jonathan pointed out, we started work on a 1,000-acre Glenshire fuel break that's east of the airport, and we were able to get lucky to win a grant from the NFF and CAL FIRE. The picture on the far right is how this fuel break looked last week, and you can see it's not as conducive to fire. There's not as many ladder fuels, and fire won't be completely prevented, but fire crews would be able to put it out relatively quickly. This project's about 80% completed. It should be done before August, so we're going to see some benefit for the fire season this year. And there are a number of projects that have happened or are going on or planned in the WUI, but of course not as much or as fast as we would like. We know fuel reduction works, and I just wanted to mention that, and I know some of you are familiar, and we're here in 2007. This particular fire started on I-80 near Donner Lake in 2007, burned up the hill towards Tahoe Donner. There was some great firefighting going on by all the cooperative agencies, but I think everybody agrees what really slowed this fire was the years of fuel reduction work that Tahoe Donner had done around the HOA. If you look closely at this picture, you can see where the brush had been thinned ahead of the fire, and this is where the fire slowed, and firefighters ultimately were able to catch the fire. So I think that's a great picture that sort of shows the value of that work. Of course, let's bring it down to sort of our home level. Reducing fuels around homes is still the gold standard of reducing fire spread in neighborhoods. As many of you know, reducing fuels around the home can slow the fire, allow firefighters a chance to get to your house and defend it from fire. Homes that catch fire also can help build a fire and throw off an incredible number of embers that start new fires downwind. So defensible space is important for you, but it's also important for your neighbors. I'm not going to go through all of this in detail. I know many of you are savvy mountain dwellers and know how to create defensible space, but I wanted to put up some of the key actions that our inspectors see routinely out in the field. Our agencies combined in the Truckee area will do over 3,000 home-to-home inspections this year and provide education and information to homeowners to how they can come in compliance. Remember, the law requires you to reduce fuels in the 100 feet from your house. A couple of the keys that we see routinely are trees that need to be limbed up at least 6 feet so the fire can't jump into that tree and it stays on the ground. Also on the way in today, I noticed that the grass is starting to grow like it does every year this time of year. It's really important that we keep those grasses low. The fires can get into these light, flashy fuels around our neighborhoods, and they can move very quickly. And lastly, I wanted to mention a relatively new concept of this 5-foot area around your house that we refer to as the Ember resistant zone. A number of studies from some of the more recent fires are showing that after the fire blew through a neighborhood, the fire ended up creeping around the house, and if it got into the grass or maybe say a bush next to the house would burn down hours later, and of course there would be nobody there. People were evacuated and fire crews are off doing other work. So keep that 5 foot from your house completely clear of all vegetation. I noticed some people extend their drip line and their gravel line out that far, and that's probably a good best practice. But anyway, not enough time to go into the incredible amount of details that you can do to protect your house and neighborhood. So go to readyforwildfire.org and become an expert on these best practices on fire prevention and things that you can do. Of course, once you've done that work, you develop a bunch of green waste and material that you need to get rid of, and I wanted to put up some free opportunities that are going on right now in the neighborhood. Green waste carts have started every other week in Truckee. There's a free drop-off at the rodeo grounds starting this Friday from 8 until 2. And then popular over the last few years are dumpsters dropped at your front yard that you can fill and will be picked up the following week. Let somebody else do the work so you don't have to haul it to the dump. Quickly, I just wanted to report out on a neighborhood wildfire safety program that has really taken hold in the Truckee area since last time we spoke last year. FireWise is a national program that shows that your neighborhood is committed to wildfire safety, and in some cases, insurance companies have looked favorably on it. As you can see, we're now over 20 neighborhoods and HOAs that are certified FireWise communities, which is no small feat. So if you're not a FireWise community and you're not sure what I'm talking about, make sure give the fire district a call, and we'd like to get you going in the right direction on that great program. I did want to mention that there's a we've done a lot of wildfire prevention work, and since 2016 when the CWPP was made, we identified all these acres of land and all of our partners and lots of grant money from CAL FIRE. We were able to get a lot done. However, we really think there's an opportunity to move faster and do more and move more consistently with a community wildfire prevention fund. The fire board surveyed voters, and they they asked them what they thought. And 95% of the surveyed voters said wildfire is the most important issue to them in Truckee. 79% said they would support a $179 tax measure to do things like reducing brush and dead trees and fire hazards, and pay for a more robust green waste and defensible space program. We've also been following similar areas that have done things like this. Marin County had a similar successful measure last year. This measure will go to the voters in August, and if passed, of course, it'll have fiscal controls like an 8-year sunset, citizens oversight committee, and things like that. But anyway, if you want more information, go to truckeefire.org, and we have a whole page built with lots more detail on that. But you'll see that ballot in August. Reducing fire starts is important. 95% of wildfire are human-caused, and we're no exception here in Truckee. Here are two pictures that will resonate with people in the Truckee area. One is some improperly disposed of charcoal that started a fire near Glenshire a few years ago. The other, unintended campfire the following day in Tahoe Donner that heated up and ended up starting a fire. And we were just lucky enough that it was not windy on either of these days, and fire crews were able to get these fires out. And they were near homes and in neighborhoods. In Truckee and the entire region, there is a ban on campfires and charcoal barbecues that run during fire season. And that's going to start sometime, it sounds like, in later May, and is going to go all the way through November or until we get some significant rain. We think this program's worked, and we've seen a reduction in campfire-related escape fires. Of course, as Jonathan pointed out, if you see illegal campfires, or let's say you're out hiking and you run across an old campfire and it's not cold to the touch, we encourage you to call 911. We want to come out on those, all three of our agencies, and we'll make sure that campfire is dead out. Of course, campgrounds are exempt from the ban. They're usually not the problem because they're monitored areas, but some people ask that question. Just getting down to the last couple things here. The worst day to get a fire start, as many of you know, is a red flag day, and red flag days are generally driven by big winds during fire season. The National Weather Service puts out information when we're in critical weather, and we advertise that to the public on those days through the media, through Nixle. We typically see about 5 to 10 red flag days a year, and last year we saw 15 red flag days in this area. These are the days, of course, we don't want to spark, and you should be paying attention to your phone and be ready to quickly leave if a fire does start. Don't even wait for an evacuation notice in some cases, because it will quickly grow out of control. Nixle is the way we can communicate directly with you if a fire does start, and if you're not sure what I'm talking about, go to nixle.com. You can see it up on the board, and you can sign up and get emails and phone blasts. And we send this information directly out from the Incident Command Post, and so you get sort of real-time information on smoke in your neighborhood. Just to finish up here, and I think Chief Estes, hit on this nicely. The last leg of the stool is the fire response, and just not to go into a lot of detail, I can say I think we have one of the best coordinated and multi-agency responses for a rural area, so you can feel good about that. As you can see in the chart, we have a good fire camera coverage to be able to see fires and size them up when they start. We have mutual aid from our neighboring fire districts, the Forest Service, CAL FIRE, all of which have fire stations in our fire district. And additionally, firefighting aircraft gets dispatched routinely to fires in our area, and you'll see them flying overhead. So we can't thank our partners enough for this great coordinated response. Anyway, that's all I have today. Thank you for following along. I think the slides will be available later if you want to get to any of those resources.
Thank you, Chief. And by the way, this whole program is available for the next month if you want to go online and watch it again, or watch it for the first time. I watched it a couple days ago. I was gone traveling in Utah second Tuesday, and my partner, Raven Whittington, sat here, and I'm actually surprised I got invited back. He did a much better job than I'm doing. So now we have time. We have about 10 or 15 minutes for questions. Teddy, did we get anything?
I have a couple.
Lynn?
Okay. Are you aware of any assistance from agencies or companies who operate satellite monitoring to detect wildfire?
Don't all jump in on that.
Maybe no.
That'd be a no.
Yeah, from the state perspective, I'm not aware of any specific third-party vendors or private companies that do anything satellite-based. We do have out of the University of Nevada, Reno, in cooperation with the Forest Service, CAL FIRE, we have a really, really intricate network of the fire alert camera systems, but those are not satellite-based.
Actually, a somewhat follow-up question to that. Who is monitoring all the cameras at Alert Wildfire Site?
So the cameras are multi-purpose. They are available on the internet that you can log in and scroll through and see each of those camera views from the browser. But our Grass Valley Emergency Command Center has access to all those cameras on a series of large monitors, and they can control those cameras with a joystick, and it's pretty amazing, not only the detection, but the intelligence that they can gather from being able to look at the column and the spread and that, so, yeah.
Can you highlight the changes we should expect to see as a result of the new 2021 BOF fire safe regulations?
Yeah, so you're talking about the Board of Forestry, Title 14, and they are proposed at this point, just to be clear. They have gone through a number of iterations. I believe the original proposal was somewhere in the 60 to 75 page range. I think it's down to 40 pages or so. So as it goes through public comment, and these are proposed fire safe regulations that are with the Board of Forestry, which is separate from the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, just to be clear. It's I think probably the most impactful thing with the new proposed regulations would be, especially up here on the east side, would be the impacts to setbacks for new building construction, and the mitigation measures for setbacks would be to have certain home hardening materials used in the construction of a building in order to counteract that setback or lack of setback. The problem is I know with some local regulations in the Tahoe Basin and the east side regarding permeable materials, and that's causing some concern. And quite frankly, the cost of building materials right now is very, very high, and some of those required building materials would be challenging for builders. So our department has taken some concern with the new proposed regulations, and we will be weighing in on those as a fire agency. Access and egress, evacuation routes, driveways, home hardening standards, setbacks, etc. While generally good in nature when you talk about the protection of homes in the WUI environment and those people, but not without challenges that our department will be looking at the next public hearing.
Thank you so much. That came from one of our town council members, Jan Zabriskie.
Ted?
Yes.
May I build on this topic of regulation? Because, Bill, you brought it up, and I wanted to make sure it was shared widely within the community, which regarding defensible space. So if you're a homeowner, private property, you abut the national forest, we absolutely, as an agency, support the 100 feet of defensible space. And so I can provide you a letter of approval so that you can go onto the national forest and reduce fuels out to 100 feet on the national forest. And so that's something we can do very quickly, and I want to make sure that was out there and utilized.
That's great. Ted?
Okay, I have a question. I am a new resident. How do I find out about evacuation routes? I guess Chief Celine probably.
Yeah, great. The town of Truckee has Office of Emergency Services, and on the website you can go to a button on the town website, and you can see an evacuation map and plan as well, and preferred routes out of each of the neighborhoods. And it's important, of course, to know not just one way out of your neighborhood, but at least two ways out of your neighborhood, because one of those ways could be blocked in a fire.
Question for Brian. You had mentioned that you have your air attack equipment down in Grass Valley. What is the response time to reach the Truckee area?
So we have our air attack and 2 air tankers that are based out of Grass Valley. Realistically, I think the response time into the Truckee Basin is probably less than 10 to 12 minutes, I would say, just off the top of my head. It's, as the crow flies, it's very quick. The great thing about aviation resources across California is that it is truly blind to the jurisdiction or to the agency. And so as the incident commanders on the ground would order aircraft, we would look at those closest resources, and that might come out of Minden, it might come out of Stead, into the state of Nevada. Certainly Grass Valley is our home base right here to the Truckee Basin, but those aircraft are controlled regionally, and we will absolutely use that closest resource. CAL FIRE tries to maintain a standard where we can have an aircraft, firefighting aircraft, over any fire in the SRA within 20 minutes. And we are generally successful at that in keeping our bases covered. And so that would follow suit with our response to Truckee from Grass Valley.
Thank you. Do you have one?
Okay. A few years ago, there was a fire, maybe 70 acres or so at Boca, and a group of us gathered on the bluff watching this, and the helicopters were dipping into the lake and putting out the fire with modest success, and then a couple of little planes were dropping borate or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes this monster plane, looked like a DC-9. It actually had the windows in it, like maybe it was flying from San Francisco to Reno or something, and dropped in to put a fire out. It was unbelievable, and the fire was out, done. What is that? Is that common? Do you have a bunch of those?
So yeah, there's a myriad of different aircraft available in the federal and state firefighting fleet. The aircraft you're kind of referring to, Jim, would be contractual in nature. The federal government, Forest Service, and the interior agencies contract some of those aircraft, and CAL FIRE will enter into those aircraft as well. But it's a myriad of really ex-commercial aircraft, like you're talking about, DC-10s, up until this year, the 747, MD-87s, BAE 146s, kind of what they're calling the next generation of jet-powered aircraft. Large capacity, anywhere from 7 to 15,000 gallons of retardant, and they have a great place. They definitely have a place in the toolbox. Our tankers in the CAL FIRE fleet, which are a little smaller in nature and designed for more maneuverability and initial attack, smaller in gallonage, but designed for real quick turnarounds. And so, again, different tools in the toolbox, and very useful for different situations.
Lynn?
When does prescribed fire season stop and start?
It's completely condition-based, weather forecasts, et cetera. Unfortunately, in Truckee, for example, is that it appears that our window to continue prescribed fire has already stopped, and that's because of the early drying we're seeing. We're broadly seeing conditions in our vegetation type that reflect really late June, and that's normally a time of year in which it's going to be out of our prescribed fire plan. Other areas of the forest may still be in prescription, but unfortunately the fact is that Truckee has a pretty narrow window already.
Here's a question that really is broad to many of our employers in the area. How is the search for employees for your agency or district going?
I'll start off because we are acutely affected by this, and I appreciate the question. I don't know if Ted planted it, but
I did not.
Okay. So finding seasonal housing has been incredibly challenging this year, and this affects everyone from recreation to our seasonal firefighters. We recently, unfortunately, lost some barrack space as well, which compounded the issue, but the seasonal housing crunch affecting the ski industry, all the service sector, has certainly affected the Forest Service on this. So what are the ramifications? Well, we could have engines that perhaps are normally 7-day effective, which Truckee currently has 3 Type 3 engines here on the district. Maybe one of those engines goes to 5-day effective, so it's not available for 2 days of the week, and then we have to shuffle schedules. And so there are some real ramifications to the housing issue that this region faces. And we're not alone. All the adjacent national forests are experiencing something similar.
And Truckee Fire, it's important in a small agency to be able to keep full staffing. We are at full staffing right now. We're an all-risk agency, though, and we're typically looking for a year-round career firefighter and paramedics because we provide the EMS service as well. And so it takes a little bit longer in school and training and time in the field to be able to get to a level where they're experienced enough where we would be interested in them as applicants for a job here. But lucky enough, we've been able to attract good people because of the environment, but still deal with all the same things Jonathan mentioned, housing and those sort of things.
I think that's it. So thank you all so much, District Ranger and 2 fire chiefs. And again, thank you for your service and for your crews and everything you do for our community, such a vital part of our community. And now we move into the last segment is Stump Speeches. If anybody has any announcements, I think they can do it on the Zoom chat room. And then, Lynn, I think you started off, right?
Yes, I have 2 of them. One of them actually addresses our last question. The Truckee Chamber is hosting a Truckee hiring fair this Thursday at the Community Rec Center in the north parking lot from noon to 4. There'll be over 20 employers there. They have over 150 job openings, so it's possible you could be hired on the spot. Students are welcome, but this is not just summer jobs. There are professional, full-time, part-time, and seasonal jobs available. Of course, masks and social distancing and all of that will be in place. So for more information, visit TruckeeJobsCollective.com. I see a Stump Speech came in here via chat from Karen Wilkets about the North Lake Tahoe Truckee Leadership Program. We produced 4 leadership skills workshops in order to help our community cope with changes. Topics included value and purpose, change management, team meetings, and introverts and extroverts. The workshops were all recorded and they're available on the website at TahoeTruckeeLeadership.com. Leadership program will return in person, we're hoping by January 2022. And I have one more. Truckee Chamber and Just Imagine Marketing and Design are partnering to produce a new quarterly magazine, Truckee.com, an insider's guide. This will be complimentary to our website, Truckee.com website, with regular departments such as Explore Truckee, Play Outdoors, and Create a Big Life. It'll be mailed to every Truckee residence and available downtown at the Welcome Center and news racks. And we're hoping this helps the entire community, in addition to our new residents, get to know more about their community. More information, you can email me at lynn, Lynn, @truckee.com.
That's it. Ted, anything?
Nope, we're clear on my desk.
Clear on your desk. I appreciate that. I think that's it. So if anybody has any questions or comments or advice, tell us what we can do better. Tell us what we're doing well. You can come up with something. You can email info@truckee.com, contact Lynn, contact Ted, contact just about anybody but me, contact the people that know what's going on. And we will see you next second Tuesday. By the way, the Tahoe City group has a Tahoe City Breakfast Club on the first Tuesday, and it starts at 7 in the morning. And it's a similar program as this, and I find it very interesting if that might interest you. We good? Thank you all, our speakers. Fantastic program today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.